I just received a residual check in the mail for a job that was the most traumatic night of my dance career ever. And because I'm reliving that trauma right now, I figured it was time to tell you the story. So to paint you the picture, the pandemic is coming to an end. I moved back to New York City to continue to pursue my career in dancing, and jobs were very slim. I was really excited to come back to New York City because I felt like I had really built myself a platform and I had this momentum to come back into the industry and be auditioning for things. And I was feeling really excited and really optimistic. The only guaranteed work I had at the time was the Brooklynets dance team, but I was still auditioning for other things while working for them. On one fortuitous day, I get this email asking my availability for this TV job in Baltimore. And they were looking for dancers who had kind of like a retro feel to them to play people from the past. I ended up direct booking this job from the email, which is like the best thing ever for dancers because you don't have to audition. I did know the choreographer for this job, so I'm sure that she kind of had some trust in my ability to show up and do what I had to do. So this job required me to work as a local in Baltimore, which means that they expect you to come self-report to set even if you don't live there. So like you're working as if you live in Baltimore. And so I had to take an Amtrak the next morning down for a fitting. And because this was just after the pandemic, the protocol was really strict on COVID and COVID testing and things like that. When I arrived to the fitting, they immediately did both a rapid test and a PCR COVID test. And you can probably see where the story is going, okay? But so I had to wait, they tested me, and then I had to wait in like a quarantined area for about a half an hour. They came and got me, they said, your tests are negative, we're gonna bring you up for your fitting now. I was so relieved when they told me I was negative because at this point in time, even if you didn't feel sick, you were paranoid that you were somehow carrying COVID. The fitting was super fun. The outfits were really retro. I kind of found out we were supposed to be kind of like ghostly retro characters. Again, super, super fun. The next thing is to show up to set a day later, and how it works is show up, rehearse, hair and makeup, and then we shoot all through the night. So it was an overnight shoot at this like old church in Baltimore. It was very, very cool. So I show up to set, they rapid test us for COVID, everything's fine, we're hanging out all day, we rehearse, then they start putting hair and makeup on us, and this is like caked on hair and makeup. It's like they wanted us to look very powdery, very ghostly, which is obviously they didn't really have to work that hard on me. I'll put some pictures on top of this video. So it was like, you know, getting excited, getting into character and all this stuff. And then they load us on a bus to take us to set. It's time to film, finally. It's like close to midnight, right? One of the PAs comes in to the bus and is like, okay, everyone's good to go except Melissa, hang back with me for a second. We just need to do another COVID test. And immediately I like my heart started like thumping. I was like, wait, what? We're like going to set. I'm gonna miss, they're gonna like cut me from the scene if I don't go to set right now. And they're like, oh, that's fine. You just have to come with us. So they have this like whole, and I don't know if they still do, but they had a whole COVID team as a part of their like TV production. And so they brought me to this parking lot and they had like a whole COVID testing van. So they pulled me aside and they were like, hey, one of your tests actually like was ran incorrectly and you tested positive for COVID. And so you can't be in the movie anymore. And I immediately start to kind of like freak out like, whoa, I've been testing for the last like couple of days and I went to my fitting and I had to wait in quarantine. And they were like, oh, like, you know, it was just a mistake. So I was like, can I like retest? Can I do the PCR? And they're like, yeah, we can do a PCR, but it's going to take 30 minutes. And I was like, but they're already on set. I was like, you know, obviously panicking. But this was my first job like on a set like this. No matter what happens with being ill, like I didn't want to make a bad impression. I didn't want to seem unprofessional. At the end of the day, of course, I didn't want to be cut from the scene. I felt so panicked that I wasn't going to get to do it. So I'm under this tent in a parking lot in Baltimore at like 12:30 a.m. at this point, waiting for my test result. It starts to thunderstorm, like the worst thunderstorm of my life. Can't send me back to the green room because I'm a potential contaminant at this point with COVID and I don't live here. And I was planning to take the train back to New York like first thing in the morning. Another thing to note is that the scene was with Natalie Portman, which is just like another add to the heartbreak because I was like, well, now I'm missing out my chance to be in a scene with her, but I still had this hope of it's gonna come back and then they're gonna send me to set and everything is gonna work out great. The guy who worked on, he was like the head of the COVID team on the movie, and he was very lovely, by the way. There's no hate to him. Starts walking towards me, and I could tell he was giving me like a, it's not gonna work out type of vibe. And he was like, unfortunately, we have to send you home. And I'm a little bit like inconsolable at this point. I was like very, very visibly upset. And I told him like with tears in my eyes, I said, I don't live here. I live in New York and I have an Amtrak scheduled for like 8 a.m. for after the overnight shoot. but I have to like find a place to go. They were very, very kind, and they actually booked me accommodation for that night. And the funny thing was they actually booked the accommodation for up to 5 nights because that's how like long I was supposed to quarantine because I had COVID, even though I had no symptoms, with like insane tears down my ghostly makeup, got transferred to the hotel, trying to reckon with the fact that this job is not going to happen and trying to like figure out why this had to happen. Because totally honest, these types of jobs do not come up very often, and they're very, very special when they do. And it was also my first job after COVID. So after like a year and a half of literally no work at all. And it was very exciting. So it was a little bit like, it was like very spirit crushing for sure. And now I can look back and think it's funny, but also I really don't think it's funny. I'm still like, it's honestly, I'm like sweating retelling the story because of how traumatic it was for me, because it's like, man, I really care about what I do and I don't get to do that stuff very often. So it was definitely a very traumatic night for me. But the job was Lady in the Lake on Apple TV, and I think it might have been episode 2 or 3 or 4. I never watched it because I didn't want to be upset by it. But it was a scene with Natalie Portman, and it was, I'm sure it was very, very beautiful, but I never got to be in it. But I got paid $534.42 for my pain and never being in the show. So that's my traumatic story.